Record to the cloud. All right, we are recording. Um, cool. So we just kind of start out like in a conversation too, Rich. So it's not a big deal. But Jake, good morning, my friend. This is our first French Press podcast recording on a Friday.
In the morning. I kind of like it. I feel like we're one with our listeners. We've kind of been soft doing it in the afternoon, but we've got the coffee. We're ready to buzz. It is currently 5:58 on the dot.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And we got French Press coffee too. So ready to go. But huh?
I said rocking and rolling. We're ready to go.
Yes, sir. So this one's a really cool episode because one, it's really early in the morning, and the reason why it's really early in the morning is I have a good friend named Rich Gandy, who I met a couple of years ago from a mutual friend. Rich came over from England and started his training one of my good friends, Cam, for hockey at a gym out in Massachusetts. And through Cam, I spoke to Rich and we became great friends and kept in touch throughout the years. And Rich, I'll let you know, or you can let the listeners know where you are now. But yeah, I just want to introduce Rich. Good morning. I think it's what time is it over there, Rich?
Yeah, 2 p.m. over here. So good afternoon from over here. Good morning for you guys. Appreciate you having me on. Like I said, we haven't spoke for a while, so like in person, well, not in person, but face to face on like Zoom and that. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of have a chat with you and a bit of a catch up.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time. Keeping in touch over Instagram and everything. So, Rich, I guess you want to just start from the beginning, or say kind of who you are, where you are now, and then how it all started, pretty much.
Yeah, cool. So I'm Rich. I'm living out in Dubai now. Kind of bounced around a few places since I've graduated from college, and one of them places was obviously the US that brought me and you into contact. So I struggle with the years here. I think it was like 2011, graduated from university or college, you guys call it, exercise science, nutrition major. And I kind of was at a bit of a loss of what to do with myself. I didn't know where to take it. Where I'm from in the UK, it's very much like engineering, industrial background. And if you don't get a job in one of them places, like straight off the bat when you're like 16, 17, there's really, unless you kind of pave your own way and start your own business up, there's really not a great deal going on. It's kind of like out on a limb where we are. So there's not really a great deal in terms of like exercise science jobs going. You might find yourself lucky in finding a bit of a gig with a pro team. But again, where we're at, there's not really a lot of pro teams around. And you've also got to factor in a certain point when you got to start paying the bills and all that kind of comes into it. So I actually ended up in the US. There was maybe 6 or 7 of us from university that would all graduate at the same time. And we were like, right, what are we going to do? We finished graduate in like May or June, I think it was. And one of the boys was like, right, well, I'm coaching football this year and I'm going out to the US. So we should all just go out with a bit of a bang. We'll like probably be the last time we're all together. So we'll go and spend the summer in the US together. So we're like, hey, no one else has got plans. Let's do it. So, we went to this recruitment day for this coaching company for coaching football. And one of the boys who told us about it, he sold us on this California dream that he'd out in LA coaching football. So we were like, oh, this is going to be sweet. We're going to be spending the summer in California all together. We do like Beverly Hills, LA, all that kind of stuff. And then sure enough, we got all our placements. One guy's in Texas, one guy's in LA, one guy's in Minnesota. I got put in Massachusetts. and there's a couple of boys down in Baltimore as well. So like, well, that didn't really got a plan in terms of our big summer plan that we had going on. But in one way, I think it was probably the best thing that could have happened, because it kind of puts you in that, like, well, out of your comfort zone, if you will. So I mean, we were all traveling to a foreign, well, a country that we'd never been to. We didn't know anyone when we landed up there. And yeah, it just kind of puts you in a position where you kind of got to network with people and kind of find your own way, which I think for me was a huge part of kind of how I've got to where I am now, and why I've continued to kind of, not to say like travel around, I guess, a little bit, because since leaving university, well, since leaving home when I was 18 to go to university, I've really not lived back in my hometown for maybe like 8-9 years now, I think, so like 10 years maybe. So yeah, it's been kind of cool where it's took me on the journey, and I've met some cool people like yourself along the way, so grateful for that.
Rich, I have two questions. The first is, where is home?
So I'm from a small place in the northwest of the UK. Whenever anyone asks me, I always just say Manchester, because it's like the easiest way to get out of it, and it's just. But I'm like 2 hours north of Manchester, so like northwest England. The county itself is called Cumbria, and it's the town is called Millom.
Okay.
And it's, like I say, it's pretty. It's in a really, like, when I go back there now, I kind of don't appreciate what it was that I left. The place is amazing, like in terms of countryside, like all the mountains, lakes. Like, we're literally, the house I grew up in was like 2 minutes away from the beach. So yeah, we spent a lot of time there. But then, like I say, it gets to the point where when you get to like 16, 17, you start to thinking what you're going to do. It was one of them places that I was like, yeah, I got to leave. I don't really, there's not much around here for me. But now when I do go back, I love the place. I've really kind of, like you said, took for granted what it was when I was growing up there, because you kind of, since I've lived in like Boston, well, around Boston areas, even living now in Dubai, like you kind of miss that countryside kind of vibe that you get, which I've always loved to go back to, and what I've always grown up with. So yeah, it's a quiet spot though, isn't it?
I think that's so natural though. I mean, just at least for me, being in Boston my whole time, like your whole life, you can never appreciate it until you're kind of gone for a little, and then you come back and you're
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
love with it. You just need a little bit of a break. That's awesome. The second thing you had mentioned, and I think for the listeners and selfishly for me, you had said that in the UK with the education, they're kind of pushing you to become an engineer, to become a doctor, to do something very quickly out of university. And I had heard that before, but I've never understood what that looks like. Is it that you're doing graduate school in your undergrad? Because it seems a little bit different than the US. Do you mind expanding on that a little?
Yeah, I mean, I use that term the way I kind of explained it for like the place that I'm from. Like, if you want a bit of job security, if you want a career in something close to home, we have like a shipyard that's maybe like 40 minutes away, and a nuclear power plant. And I want to say I was like in the 2% of people that when we leave school, because in England we leave school at 16, so you've got like a big decision to make when you're 16 as to whether you go and do like a vocational job, or you stay on at school for an extra 2 years and get your kind of prereqs for university, which is what I did, purely out of not knowing what I was going to do with myself. So I was like, hey, this buys me another 2 years. So yeah, stayed on after I left school at 16. Did prereqs in like biology, anatomy, physiology, all the kind of stuff that you would do before going to an exercise science degree. And yeah, so I wouldn't say it's such a society thing. It's more of just wherever you're from. And in my case, where I'm from, it's you've kind of got two options. You either go industrial, like working in the engineering, like out of my kind of group of friends, there's probably what, like maybe 12, 15 of us. I'm the only one who went to university, and at 18 and did a degree course. Now, a lot of them now are still doing degree courses, but they've done it through the companies that they're working for now. Probably the smartest way to do it because they've got it all paid for. I'm the one left with student debt though. But in terms of the time that I had at college and the time that they had at college, I'm going to say mine was 100% more fun than this one.
Yeah, Rich, it's so funny how at 16 you kind of have to make those big decisions where you're from.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Like I'm just getting my license at 16, and I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm still figuring it out. So, what was talking to your parents and moving out to the U.S.? What was that conversation like with you and your parents, and what were their thoughts on it?
Oh, they didn't even think twice about it. They knew for a long time, even like in the kind of like my last year at school, I was chatting about maybe joining the army, going in the forces or whatnot. And my dad was in the army, so we always kind of traveled around. He's had that kind of thing where he left home at 16, he did his own thing, went off, traveled all over the world. So yeah, it was never anything that I would say they discouraged, or if anything, they kind of pushed me into being like, hey, if you got to go and kind of find your own way, go and do what you got to do, and as long as you're enjoying yourself, as long as you keep it safe, they were really behind it. And like I said, when I left at 18 moved out to go to university, and the first few weeks I would kind of come back every like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I was like, well, why am I coming back all the time? Like I was like, there's not really a great deal. Like, if I want to go home, I can go home, but you kind of, not to say that you leave everyone behind, but you just meet different people who take you on different paths, and you end up doing stuff at weekends with other people that you kind of meet along the way. And then I guess so I kind of started on that small scale of being maybe like 3 hours away from home, and then I was like, well, it's not too different to being if you're 3 hours away to drive, or you're a 7 hour flight away. Like, hey, I'm not really at home anyway, so I kind of got used to that. I kind of got used to that really like early on, of being kind of like my own person, doing my own thing. And if no one was there to kind of share it with me, then I just go off and do something by myself. It never really bothered me. Like I hear a lot of people say, "No, like, oh, you're so brave traveling on your own." I'm like, well, I didn't really look at it that way. I was like, well,
yeah.
If I can't find anyone to do something with me, I'll just go do it myself. I don't need someone to hold my hand through it. So
I love that.
Yeah, that was my kind of way of looking at
it. Sorry, you want to go? This is the basin we need to kind of know. How did you get into exercise science? When did that start?
Yeah, so typical kind of kid who's always been involved in sport. Growing up, I was always playing sport, whether it was football, rugby's huge where we live. In the summer, we'd play cricket.
Great game.
You name it. There was I tried to explain that to Americans at a 4th of July party. Tried doing that a few times. But yeah, there was like anything that was going. Hey, if the teachers at school said we need to field a team of field hockey, I'd be like, I'll have a go. Yeah, let me pass me a stick. I'll give it a whack. So yeah, growing up, I've always been involved in sport, and then as I kind of got to an age, probably more so for rugby, like under 16s, I used to get dinged around every week, and it was like, well, the coach is like, you need to put a little bit of size on, so maybe start hitting the weight room a bit. And then I just kind of fell in love with the gym. I just loved like everything about it, kind of what it does for you, and like you said, the development kind of path that it kind of set me on from like 16, 17 years old, like when we were going in there. And of course, when we had no idea what we were doing, we were reading like articles out of Men's Health magazine and stuff like that to going in to try and build a bit of size, and coming out just doing bicep curls and
love that.
all the normal stuff that you do when you're like a 17-year-old, 16-year-old kid just finding the weight room. So yeah, we a lot of it was kind of self-discovery. We didn't really have a lot of coaches as such around, which I guess that kind of made it more of a thing for me, that we never had anyone in our town. Like you'd get the guys in there, or like your mate's dad who was in the gym who'd be telling you what to do, but he was the same. He had no idea what he was doing. He was just kind of going off what some articles that he'd read, or what his guys at work had tell him to go to the gym and do 3 sets of 10 on back and biceps, 3 sets of 10 on chest and back, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, when I going through my my prereqs for university, it was kind of like, well, we dug a bit more deeper in anatomy, physiology, and all that kind of stuff just kind of lit a fire in me. And I would say if my my college, not my college course, it was, well, we call it college in England, where you do your prereqs. I was the only person in my PE class for anatomy physiology, so it was just me and a teacher. It was this add-on to like the school that I went to. You can stay on another 2 years at the same school and do your prereqs there. So I knew all the teachers there. A lot of people obviously leave at that point at 16. I stayed on, so I had a really good relationship with my PE teacher at the time, and he was class. We just sit in there, and it didn't feel like I was in a class with him. We just put on like a few videos here and there, chat about what it was, and chatting through textbooks and stuff like that. And it was just really informal way, but I feel like that was probably the best thing that could have happened, because I was never one to be like studious as such and sit and just read books all the time. But the way we kind of worked around it with him, yeah, it was quality. And yeah, that was something that I would say then made me kind of want to further the path really in that field. So when it came to choosing courses and things like that to go to, yeah, it was kind of like the obvious thing for me to like step into after the prereqs that I'd done. It kind of fitted well. I had the sport background that I wanted, and yeah, went from there with it really.
Wow. I mean, I'm so jealous being in exercise science classes with 30 kids, and you've never heard you've never heard the 3 letters ATP before, and you're like,
yeah. Trying to go through all the energy systems. Yeah, like, no, dude.
Yeah, so I mean, that's awesome. Has that teacher kind of been your mentor, and like, do you still keep contact?
Yeah. I mean, he was he always played sports in the local sports leagues as well. He was from maybe like 40 minutes away from like our town where we're from, and so there'd sometimes be when we'd left school, and even when I'd left university, left college and gone on to university, and I'd come home for the summer, he'd play for like other sports teams, and we'd play against each other. So we'd catch up after, have a beer together. And actually, before I came to Dubai, I went and had a chat with him, because I was moving into more of a teaching role when I first came out to Dubai. So I just went and kind of had a chat with him, spoke about basically he was by at that point the head of like PE department, and he'd kind of progressed a bit himself. So I just wanted to it was before my interview, so I kind of wanted a little bit of inside information. Pick the brains of what they would be looking for. So I kind of went at the interview like ticking all the boxes before. But yeah, it all worked out, and like I say, here I am now.
That's awesome, man. So, Rich, I'm kind of curious too, because I don't think I ever really knew, besides you meeting Cam. You know, you get off the plane in the States. What do you kind of do from there? How did you find, I think it's called Power Source, the gym? Like,
yeah.
Generate.
So I'll just go back a few steps before I actually came to the US, because I probably wouldn't have been in the boat to be coming to the US full time, because I took the coaching job for the football camps. That was literally like a 6-week thing, and then I had to leave because of the visa, so I had to come home. But while I was at college, I got an internship, a strength and conditioning internship at a rugby team, a pro rugby team in the top flight of UK rugby, and worked with the academy there. So I was like, I would go there 3 times a week, go to the stadium, and it was one of the things I used to go and watch. The team's called Wigan. I used to go and watch Wigan like when we were younger, and a lot of the players that I used to watch were then moved on into coaching roles in the academy and like the reserve grade. So I would go to training on these, like, I think it was like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night that we'd go. And so I'd go through there, and then I think it was like the first or second time I went, all these players started coming through that I used to watch, and they were now on coaching staff, and we all got pulled in a meeting and stood up, and they were like, just like introduce Rich, he's the new intern for the Academy S&C, and started chatting with all these players that, like I said, I'd idolized growing up, and it was kind of a bit of a whoa, like starstruck moment there for a second, and then after that, they kind of chatting with them, and then it just become like, these boys are sound, yeah. So I ended up getting the internship with them guys. Did that for a year, and then I got that in my second year at university, and then they asked me if I could carry on for a second season. So I did that into my third year at university, and then of course that kind of that kind of progressed and developed, and I developed that because I learned so much from them guys there. Like even not so much even in a theoretical sense, but just in terms of being in a practical setting. Like we would sit in lectures for hours on end about this professor telling you about how you can develop energy systems, put this into practice, do A, B, and C of strength and conditioning principles. But until you're in the situation where you actually have to deliver or plan and deliver a session for, I mean, in them teams there for like the under 16s, the under 18s, there was like 30 guys that were there in each of the age groups. I worked with the 16s and the 18s. So they'd kind of like go off, do the field-based sessions with the field coaches, then they're coming into the gym, and then we'd take them for like 45 minutes maximum. Like, so you had to kind of squeeze in 3 times a week for what these boys needed, especially in the preseason when it was kind of like a crazy busy schedule, because believe it or not, the coaching staff don't really see it, although they know strength and conditioning is important, but they always prioritize the ball work and everything that goes out on the field, which is obviously is very important for the sport that they're playing, but it was never a priority to like give, especially with the younger academy lads, like a good, I don't know, 2 hour session where you could kind of work through like all different facets of training with them. But so yeah, until you kind of get thrown into the situation where you've got 30 guys stood in front of you being like, right, Rich, what we doing? And then you're like, all right. And I absolutely loved that bit. Like that kind of was my under the lights moment where I was like, right, boys, this is what we're doing. Get yourself into these groups. We'd run through like a bunch of prehab stuff, get them all kind of warmed up. And then we'd like the session that we had planned for them. And yeah, it kind of just developed from then. So yeah, I got a huge amount of that out of that from a development point for me. And I want to say, without doing that and without kind of devoting that time, because I mean, I used to go there 3 times a week, not get. I mean, it was an unpaid internship. It was like maybe like 30 minutes away from campus, so I'd have to drive my car that I was kind of like scraping the barrel to pay the insurance on every. I think I paid the insurance quarterly on it, and I was like every 3 months trying to get. I don't know, I think it was like £120 together to get my insurance paid, and then 3 times a week trying to put like, I'd go to the petrol station and put like £5 in to make, like, which is what, like, I don't know, $8 just to kind of get me to and from there. But I wouldn't change a thing for that, because like I said, it gave me so much in terms of like my personal and it's kind of not even there, but and I loved every second of that. Just being in that environment around them guys was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I think, as you had mentioned, and also I'm sorry if I'm cutting in and out, my computer's all wonky. But that internship must have been the greatest thing ever. The free practice, I mean, honestly, doing some form of trial and error, I can't even imagine. One thing I want to ask about that, though, is when you're new and you're coming in and they say, hey, Rich, just what are we going to do? What's going through your head, and kind of what's the process of what your trial and error would have been? So like, how do you start and how did you adjust when you would, for lack of a better term, screw up in the training.
Yeah. And yeah, there was times when you would kind of have to just think on the fly. But I mean, for the most part with it, I've not to say I've always been really confident, but I've been comfortable in a. I've always coached like bigger groups, so I've always been comfortable speaking ahead of people or like speaking in front of a group of people. That is to say, when I'm comfortable about what I'm talking about. If I'm confident and comfortable about what I'm talking about, which I was in that sense. And the guys in the gym as well, they don't really see you as like, oh, this is the new intern. You're just introduced to the players as this is the new S&C coach. Like, this is Rich. Do what he says, basically. So I think if I'd have been brought in as like a bit of an understudy, which I mean, we were understudy to the actual coaches, but they were pretty cool in the fact that they give us a lot of responsibility early doors. So you kind of go in there being like, if I'm not prepared, then these guys are going to just, it's going to be me that falls flat on my face. So it kind of just made you prepare, like probably more so than what you actually needed to. But I would say that was probably another thing that kind of taught me to always kind of over prepare for any situation. Have something in the back of your in the back of your mind that you think, if that doesn't work, we'll move on to this. Because there's always going to be times when you've got like a big group of people and you maybe the field session that they were supposed to run for 45 minutes runs into an hour. So now you've only got 30 minutes and you're like, right, well, we got to like adjust on the fly. We got to do it. We got to cut A out. We'll start BC. We'll do this, and this. And yeah, it was like I say, something that I feel is invaluable, actually being in the scenario where you've got like a real world situation going on.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I'd go back into lectures and people would be like, oh no, so we need to do it this way. I'd be like, you can't do that. Like, I've legit been in the field doing it, and you can't be like that in that situation. But yeah, like I say, it was an amazing experience, and from that, it kind of led on to when I would leave, when the season finished in the summer, and I went back home. I would there's like a few lower league teams that a few of my friends played in. So then I ended up saying like, I'll come along and I'll take some of your field-based like agility sessions or the weight room. Like, I'll chat with the coach and see what we can do, because them guys are still semi-pro at that level, and it's still a very good level. There are a lot of the guys that probably were in the academy teams that maybe didn't make the first grade cut, that they can then fall back into like these Division 1, Division 2 teams, and even then the guys are machines at that level. And yeah, so it wasn't so much as like a step down in ability for me, because the guys were still very competent at that level. It was just another kind of scenario that I could put myself into, challenge and try and learn a bit from. So yeah, it opened a lot of doors for me, really.
I was gonna say, Rich, when you were kind of thrown in the fire as an intern in front of all those, soccer players, it resonated with me because I remember being at Boston College and, first week's over, everyone kind of knows who you are. Kudos to your strength coaches saying, hey, this is the new strength coach. It's not, hey, this is, an intern. Like,
yeah.
Is a part of the staff. And so that establishes a lot more trust with the athletes, I think. You still got
100%
earn their trust, and that's huge. And then the other thing too is, being thrown in the fire, being told, hey, Dan, you got warm-ups. You got to do warm-ups. You're going to stretch the whole team out. Your blood pressure starts rising. Fire in your head. So did you find that happened a lot in your, kind of coming up as an intern, and just being thrown in the fire was the best way to learn?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that my not so much in the training sessions, because like it was kind of like a bit of a laid back vibe in the weight room, which was they'd go and do all the real intense stuff, like in terms of tactics and tackling and all that kind of stuff outside. So they'd come in, they'd be like busted from doing all that work, and then they were all like say 16, 17-year-old lads who just love to be in the gym as well. So it kind of eased the pressure for them a bit when they come into us. They could be a bit more relaxed around the S&C coaches. They can have a little bit of chat with them, have a bit of, we'd like fire jokes back and forth between each other and whatnot. So it was a good environment to be in like that, in that sense. So that kind of like put me like a little bit more like chilled out as well. But then I would say, in terms of that, what you're just saying there, the first game day that they said, right, Rich, the actual head S&C coach can't be there. You're on game day duty. And from the minute they said, I was like, oh, here we go. So meet up in the morning, get on the team bus, take the bus down to it was probably like a 30-40 minute drive away. And then the whole dynamic of everything just like on a game day is just totally different. Like everyone's heads are like just totally screwed on, like players, coaches, everyone's just like ups the game to a total different level. So I'm like, right, I gotta pick this up here. And the intensity that even we're doing warm-ups at everyone's, and especially for rugby as well, because rugby you've got to be fired up to get into, like, you can't go into a game like half-hearted. So these boys are like, even in the warm-up, they're like hitting the tackle shields, like they call it pummeling, where they'll like kind of wrestle with each other. And yeah, just that whole vibe again, like in the is like the atmosphere in the changing rooms and on the on-field warm-ups. So that for me was like, right, here we go, get fired into this. And like you say, you kind of take it, you can kind of take it two ways. You can kind of be in a situation that you feel like is daunting and let it kind of win, or you can kind of level yourself up a little bit and meet it head on. And the kind of atmosphere that was already there, if you weren't up for it, you kind of stuck out a little bit. So yeah, you just got fired up with the boys, and it was quality. I loved the game days. And yeah, that was after that one. They were like, hey, we got to get you back again for the game. So yes, did something right.
Oh yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great.
Oh man, it's just hearing you talk about the game day. I can't even, like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it'll make sense and circle around. It's so hard to, like, when you're playing sports when you're younger or whatever, you get those butterflies and you just get so jacked up to go into the game. And for so long, when you're in the classroom and just not doing stuff, like, you lose that fire. And I think like a major goal is to find any career where you can even get like a tenth of that, because there's just something about sports, specifically a contact sport, when you're talking about rugby.
Yeah.
You got to get into a different zone. And I'm just like, with the buzz of the coffee, it's getting me a little fired up. So I appreciate it.
No, definitely, I agree with you 100% there. It's like you say, you kind of go through them times where you maybe not playing sport anymore, and you don't get that little buzz of what you're doing. And yeah, like what you touched on, and if you can find any kind of career that puts you in that position where you get like a buzz off doing it, like you find me like 10 people that can tell you that they do that, and I'd be surprised, because a lot of people just kind of settle into the mundane thing of going to work, going through the process. And yeah, so it definitely did that for me.
Absolutely. Switching gears, what did you think? So let's bring you now to the US.
Yep.
What did you think when you land in the beautiful state of Massachusetts? What were your first thoughts?
I'm trying to think now, actually. I actually went to Rhode Island first. I flew into Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
That was where, when I initially came out coaching the football, that was where we were based out of Providence. And I don't know, you might have done some of the camps we did. So you would, in the summer, you'd travel around different towns and you'd basically get put with a host family. So like, if their kid was on the camp, you'd stay with them. And I think they maybe got like $80 or something for hosting a coach. So in some town, we were up in Vermont, and some families are taking like 5 and 6 coaches and cashing on these $80 vouchers. But yeah, it was kind of like the first time I came out, you kind of got like a bit of a false sense of like what it was you were doing there, because some weekends you'd be in we were up at one place in New Hampshire. So when I say landed in Massachusetts, we got given the full New England region. So
Yeah.
you could have been put anywhere at any point, any week in summer. You could have been from. And I'm going off on about the football stuff here, but it's kind of like how I got into being in America. So I'll just quickly explain that. So we would like bounce around from different places. You'd be in Rhode Island sometimes. You'd be up in Massachusetts. You'd be up in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and some of these weeks you'd be in these mansions of houses. Like, and the guys would be like, "Oh, what are you guys doing at the weekends? We're taking the boat out on the lake. Do you want to come?" And we, like, I couldn't tell you like two or three more people that I know that have got a boat, and we were landing up at houses every weekend. And these families all had jet skis, boats. They were going tubing. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like, is this what America is? Just doing this every weekend? This is the American dream right here. And so yeah, we were like bouncing around all the different places, and it got to the point where like I was like, right, I'm kind of done with the football coaching. It served its purpose to kind of land me in America, and I kind of used it as a bit of a networking thing to. While I was over there, I didn't just kind of sit back and like rest on my laurels a bit. I tried to chat to as many people as I could. Got speaking to people that selfishly I thought could maybe benefit me in a little bit and keep me out there a little bit longer, because I love the whole the whole vibe of the place. I thought it was awesome. So it come to the time when my visa was expiring. I had like maybe a month left on it or something, and then I had to fly back to the UK. So I was like, right, I'm just going to start looking for jobs around. I mean, I was quite settled in Massachusetts, and I had one of the families that I stayed with. They were like my second family, and I still speak to them now. And yeah, so I kind of ended up staying with them for quite a while. And like I said, they were like a second family. So I kind of had my little base in a small town in Massachusetts called Leicester. I don't know. It's not too far from Worcester, right? It's maybe like 15 minutes from.
Yeah. Leicester?
Yeah. And so I was kind of like, that was my little hub where I stayed at. And I'm trying to think, I've gone off my train of thought now. So then I was looking around for jobs. So I was just checking in on like Indeed.com. I was like, there's got to be jobs around here that I can just go. And even if I don't like submit a CV, I was at the point where I was like, I want to stay here. I want to kind of make something work here. So I was just going to meet these people. I was just showing up at the places and being like, I was going to apply for a job on Indeed.com, but I wanted to just come and speak to you in person. Just like putting myself like right so they could like ignore me basically. So I would go and the first place was in Leominster. It was Power Source. I went and spoke to Jim Herrick, and I owe a lot to that guy. He's a absolute legend. I spoke to him, and I told him my situation. I was like, look, I really want to like stay out in the. I wanted like that experience in strength and conditioning in another country. Like, I wanted, if I was ever going to go back to the UK, to be able to stand out and be like, look, these guys have all done this, and this, but I've been over to the States. I've been here. I've done this. I've worked with these kind of people, and especially in the UK, you're very closed off to the kind of sports that you can work with. In terms of like the main sports that there are, you've got football, cricket, rugby, and then kind of like the further out from there you go, obviously there's not that much funding for it as well. So if you're trying to find a job, like the money drastically drops after that as well. So I wanted to kind of have something on my CV and on my resume where I was like, right, well, I've done A, B, and C. So yeah, I explained to Jim what my plan was, and I was like, I've got to leave in a month. I understand that puts you in a bit of a strange situation, but we chatted about what it was that I'd done, and he was like, you seem like you could be a really good fit, so we'll give it like a 6-month period. So I went home, and then I came back out on when I found one of my friends had a way that I could get a visa through working for this coaching company that would effectively contract you out to. They did it through soccer, like rec soccer teams out there, where they'd hire a coach from the UK and then they'd contract him out. So I basically was contracted out to Power Source, if you will. And yeah, I spent I think it was like the first 3. I think we said we'd give it like 3 months to see if it was like a fit, because if it wasn't, he obviously didn't want to commit to me, and I obviously didn't want to commit to moving to a new country, signing a visa and all that kind of stuff. And then us looking at each other and being like, yeah, this isn't working, but now we're stuck with each other. So yeah, we had the little 3-month period. All seemed to work out well, and then from there, I think I ended up staying like 3 years, 3 or 4 years after that, and yeah, that was kind of how I landed up in Leamington. Like, because people always like, even people in the gym, like I ended up taking on a lot of the adult clients in groups in Power Source, and they'd be like, "Why are you in why are you in Leominster? Why did you choose to come to Leominster?" I don't really choose to come to Leominster itself. I just wanted something where I would landed myself in the States, and I was getting paid to do something basically. So I was yeah, they used to crack up and be like, "Why have you come from the England to Leominster?"
I feel like if you were to anyone who's not a Massachusetts native too, and they were like, "Oh, how was your time in Mass?" And you said, "Oh, I was in Leominster," they would be like, "No, this guy's lying. This couldn't be real."
Exactly.
I'm dead. It's so funny because I feel like I'd do the same, Rich. You know, you're out there, you want to stay, instead of going on the websites to apply, you're just like, let's, like, I love how you just kind of went in and did it. And then it all seemed to work out, obviously. I mean, look back 3 years later, you'd coach there. Were you, was it more Gen Pop too? Was that like your first experience with Gen Pop people, or is it more athletes?
Yeah, so I'd obviously come from an athlete background, working with the academy teams and even the semi-pro teams in the summers that I'd done. So, and it's still kind of youth populations as well. I mean, even in the open age teams for the semi-pro guys, you were still working with guys that were like maybe 19 to 25 or something like that. So it was still kind of like a young population you were working with. But yeah, when I went to Power Source, it was kind of like through the day. Well, I would do the mornings, which were the Gen Pop fitness classes, where we'd kind of build in just a bit of strength and conditioning into like the sessions there. And then but the bulk of the work that we did there was with the kids. And yeah, we do just a bunch. I mean, you probably heard, like, from what Cam's told you about training there, that you can be in a session there and there'll be like 15 kids that maybe there's a high school college athlete, there's a college hockey player, some of the pro players that have worked out there like years gone by, they'll come back for a session with Jim. And then you can also have like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid who's on the first step towards like strength training. So it was kind of cool in that vibe that you'd get these little kids that would come in, but then you'd also have like, there was a guy there, Connor Caveney, he's called, and he's huge. I think he played football at Sacred Heart, and he'd come back and in his off season he'd train there with us, and you'd have him squatting like, I don't know, like deadlifting in the racks and squatting like huge amounts of weight, and then you've got this little 8-year-old kid who's just look at him like that's what I want to be like someday. Like it was such a cool environment there, because everyone kind of like got a little bit of something out of it. And yeah, I like to say I owe a lot to Jim, because he kind of took a big chance on me. He could have easily just been like, listen, I don't want to take that risk. But yeah, he kind of fronted it for me there. So that also actually opened a door up at Cushion Academy prep school. So that's where Jim actually started his business up at Cushion Academy, and then he obviously progressed into opening his own facility. And then the athletic director got in contact with him and said, "We get in this." They got this like, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Well.
Yeah, my headphone just started beeping. Sorry.
No,
but we got we got this. I think it was like a $14 million facility built up there, where they had like strength and conditioning suite. They had literally everything, like state of the art, built up there for them. And they wanted like full-time S&C coaches in the building. That was kind of the I guess it was some alumni who donated the money. That was his terms, that he wanted it there, but he also wanted somebody in there to basically make sure it ran smoothly and it ran efficiently for what it was supposed to be. So the athletic director got in touch with Jim and he said, look, we need some coaches up here. Can you send somebody up like a couple of times a week? So it ended up that me and one of the other coaches from Power Source, we would kind of take it in turns and we'd go up there 2 or 3 times, and that progressed into like a longer term thing. So yeah, it was cool working up there with some of them boys, because although we were still working with some of like youth athletes at the facility, when you went up to Cushing, that was kind of like me back in that rugby weightlifting room again environment, where you've got all these like prep school hockey kids that are like run through brick walls for you if you asked them. Like they would do it. Like there was kids there that were going, and like D1 schools, they had the basketball team there that are sending guys to like Yukon, Providence. Like them guys were like, yes, different specimens of like athletes that you think, geez, yeah. So that was a cool way that opened the door for me there.
Rich, with and Dan, you can touch in on this too. This is off of the Gen Pop. This is when I'm just thinking about all of these athletes that you have, and you're saying they're hungry and they're driven. How do you know from your perspective that you're getting the most out of them? Like, how do you push them to that breaking point?
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance with that, especially with youth athletes, because you obviously, there's a certain level that you obviously want to keep things like in a safe and controlled environment. And it also comes down to like programming, how you put things together. I mean, knowing the kids as well, knowing which kids can kind of push on, which kids you can push on, not only on a physical level, but on an emotional level, which is something that takes a bit of time to build that relationship and rapport with. But over time it does happen, and you get to know like the characteristics of like certain kids, how they, and you kind of get a feel for how you can push certain kids. Some kids don't want to be screamed at. Some kids, and I was never that guy that was standing in the squat rack and scream like, you get one more rep, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But some people, you knew which way to push them. You knew how you could get the best out of them. And I think that's kind of like comes back to the coaching part of it. Sometimes a lot of people get caught up in the whole theoretical side of things, which obviously is very important. You've got to know what you're talking about. But at the same time, you've also got to be able to connect with these athletes and these kids who they see in you as a bit of an authoritative, not an authoritative figure, but like they hold you at like in a bit of a high esteem in the fact that they're trusting what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to give them something that kind of is beneficial and is going to help with their development. And yeah, like I say, it comes down to like the not to say that I've mastered it because I'm nowhere near mastering it, but like the art of coaching, like is being able to connect, put yourself in their position and just kind of develop a kind of relationship with each one individually and kind of know how you can get the best out of each one of them. Yeah.
Rich, you had a ton of experience even before coming over to the States. Did being over in the States and coaching athletes over here, was there a main difference in how you coached in the States as compared to Europe? Were the coaches here a lot more, I don't know, energetic and screaming, or more calm, or what was kind of the parallels?
Yeah. I would say, well, first off, I would say the facilities in the US are like head and shoulders above what we got in the UK. Like for where I was working at the time. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't like places where they've obviously developed over the last few years, but in terms of at the time, the facilities that guys had available, like I say, up at Cushing Academy, I mean, you'd have pro sports teams in the UK that wouldn't have the facilities that them guys have got up there. And in terms of the environment, though, I would say, I guess you could look at it 2 ways actually, because I was always in the UK, I was working in that kind of elite category of athletes where these boys had been recruited, selected to go to this team, and they were kind of in an academy process fighting for a first team contract, basically. So they wanted that, not to say that they'd made it once they got that pro contract, but in the 16s, under 18s, and the 21s, the main goal for you was basically just to stay afloat under 16s, under 18s, show what you can do, and then show your potential to be able to maybe make it in at the reserve grade, and then make it into the pro level where you can get that contract, which that's when the game changer is really. Whereas in the US, I would say working, the energy is way higher in terms of non-elite athletes, if you will. Like we'd have just like running, not to say average kids, but they were kids that weren't maybe on the books of a pro team or weren't on the scouting list for a D1 college, but the environment that they still brought, or the energy that they brought into the environment in the gym, was still like through the roof. Whereas in the UK, you probably don't get that because there's not much of a desire to kind of further yourself in that way, because I guess in the US you've got a lot more to achieve in terms of what you could potentially get out of a college scholarship, or whereas in the UK that's not really a thing. Like you can be really good at a sport and you either make it as pro or you kind of drop off and that's you done. Like if you're not really in a pro setup by the time you're 16, and 16 is already you're pretty late to the game at that point. Like they'll be scouting kids that are like 5-6 years old into like pro football team academies and stuff like that. So I think people in the UK, they're just kind of like, it's not going to happen for me, so I'm kind of done with it. I'll brush it to the side and I'll go get a job. That's kind of like the top and bottom of it, really. Whereas in the UK, I feel in the US, sorry, you've got kids maybe at like, you could still be a walk-on into a college team. Like you could still, like if you really push yourself and you dedicate yourself and put the time in, you can still get to a level where you can maybe play in front of, I don't know how many hundreds, or even in some of these like big schools, like hundreds of thousands of people, if you really wanted to kind of put yourself out there. Whereas that's just not a thing in the UK. Like you either make it pro or you just go and play amateurs at the weekend, a bit of a weekend warrior kind of thing, where
I didn't realize how cutthroat it was out there.
Yeah. That's a much different perspective than I thought you were going to say, but that's kind of fascinating to me. I guess that, at 16, like you kind of got to figure out your life. That's not the case for everyone, but it's just, that's kind of interesting to me because you're right. In the US, there's a lot of opportunity. You could do club sports when you get to college that are pretty competitive. You could do multiple levels, and you could be a walk-on pretty late. So it's kind of, you just blew my mind. I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that there's not like you can still play sport at a very good level and a high level, but you're just not going to get much. It's more of you just wanting to do that off your own back. They're like there's teams like amateur teams where like the level is insane for like football and cricket, rugby. You'll still be at a very high level, but in terms of what you get back out of it, like you're probably not going to get any further in than that fit in that kind of field than you are at that point. So if it's something where you're looking to try and make it pro at something, you like I say, not to say that it doesn't happen. There are times, and like there's always going to be like anomalies and people who are kind of catch a break or stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, if you're not kind of picked up by anything at that point in terms of a pro career, you're probably, your chances are very slim. Let's put it that way. I don't want to dampen the hearts of everybody.
No, so this is interesting for me. I mean, and you can tell me if I'm way off, but in the UK, like if you're not one of these athletes that's going to get picked up, is the Gen Pop fitness culture just different in the UK? Like, do people who aren't going through this athlete process, do they kind of, for lack of a better term, give up on the fitness track? Like I think in the US, it's such a massive lifestyle cult thing that I wonder if that contributes.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that it's hard for me to say, because obviously there's a lot of it on social media now, but I've not really been in the UK for like a sustained period of time to kind of
judge that.
chime in too much on that. But from what I've seen recently, like, and I say recently, within the last, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, there's a huge kind of culture now in terms of like facilities, and they have like a thing, Under Armour run events now, called the Turf Games, where it's kind of all these gyms will put a team in, and it's for like every day. Like, you don't have to be an athlete to be in it. You can just be representing a gym that you go to, and there's a huge thing now where all these, I guess you can kind of label it like the functional fitness space, if you will, where it's not so much you going into a gym and just doing your own thing. You're going in to do like sessions that are programmed. They've got some kind of purpose to them. They're progressive, and you're learning different skills, and you're moving in different ways that you probably wouldn't do normally if you were going to a run-of-the-mill Planet Fitness type gym. Yeah. And I feel like there's a huge culture shift into them kind of spaces now, where everyday people are kind of getting that, oh, the word would you call it, but the intensity of their training is like gone through the roof now compared to what it was. And I guess you can kind of put that down to, like, not to say that they're doing CrossFit, but that kind of CrossFit culture where you could get somebody who is has a 9-to-5 job, but then they'll go and compete on a weekend, or they just take the level up their kind of fitness in terms of maybe not being like a sponsored athlete, but which I think is amazing. Like, if someone can go to a 9-to-5 job and then they still get their buzz out of training at the weekend or in the evenings, and then go and compete and do something at the weekend, which gives them a bit of a thrill for it, then yeah, I'm all for that, and all for people getting involved with that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Rich, I want to switch gears kind of towards the end of the story. I remember, I don't know when it was, just going through Instagram, and I see that you're in Dubai, and I texted Cam, I go, what is this guy doing? Where, like, how the hell did that happen? So can you just explain how you got to Dubai and then what you're actually doing there?
Yeah. Sorry, I've just took my headphones are leaking in my ear there. So I've just
good.
Yeah, so Dubai kind of happened when I came home from the US, and I was like back home to parents' house, and it was one of them moments where I was like, I'm back where I started when I was 18. Like, what am I doing now? I've got like all this experience behind me. I've got my degree behind me now. I've got ABC certifications and whatnot. And I'm back in the town that I tried to get away from, because there was nothing there when I first was at square one, basically. So I kind of felt like I'd gone all this like step forward, and then I'd just come right back down again. All my friends were settled in jobs. They'd kind of done all of their apprenticeships. They were all full-time jobs. Some of them were buying houses. Some were even having kids. And I was like, geez, what is going on here? Like, I'd been away for like 5 years and come back, and it was the same kind of people, but everyone had just, I guess you could say everyone grown up, everyone. And there was still me that was like, right, well, I'm still bouncing around all these places. Like, what are you doing? And they kind of like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I have no idea right now. I'm kind of back to the drawing board. And so that was when I got back in touch with a few of like the semi-pro teams. I was chatting with them, working with them a few nights a week. But again, it was kind of like, we don't really have the budget to take on a full, like, they had like a physio, and they had like one of the coaches would be like fitness coach. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, we don't have the budget to take on a S&C coach right now. So we can't really offer you anything full time. So yeah, it was kind of one of the moments where I was like, what am I going to do now? Geez, I'm back at this point again. I was working in my parents have a wine bar in town. I was working behind the bar in there. So I'd come back like, I was what, 20, 25, 20, 24, 25, something like that. I'd was like back to working behind the bar. I was like, geez, is this what I've settled now? I was doing this for maybe, I think it was maybe like months, and I was like, right, I gotta figure something out. And I'd talked to some of my friends about opening a facility, and then there was the whole thing about getting like financial backing, and I probably had about $10,000 to my name at the time, maximum, like in everything. I was like, I can't put that kind of money in. that's my life. That's my savings at the minute. I've got nothing that kind of go off. So I ended up just applying for jobs, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'm working in Dubai." I was like, "What do you do over there?" He's like, "I'm teaching," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool, but I don't have my teaching certification and stuff like that." So, and he was like, "Well, you can do it while you're out here if you really need to. They'll kind of do it with you." So I was like, "Right, you know what? I'll apply for these jobs. I'll see what comes." For me at that point, anything was better than what I was doing. I was like, I need to just make a move again and kind of get back on route. So I applied for this job, didn't hear anything for like a month, 2 months, and then I got a call saying with like, "Want you to come for an interview?" So I ended up going for an interview, sat an exam to kind of, you had to actually sit the exam the same before the interview that day. If you didn't pass the exam, then you just kind of got shipped on your way. So,
Talk about a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. So I was all the way down, I was sweating. I'm like, if I don't pass this exam, I'm not even going to get an interview. Never mind, like, can't even get my foot in the door to tell them what I'm about. Because that was my whole thing before. I was like, I'll just show up and tell them who I am. Now I've got to sit down to get in the door. So I did that. It was I mean, I'm now working in a secondary school doing exercise science and physiology kind of stuff. So it was all based on that thing, which I was comfortable enough doing, but it was just the fact that it was kind of like a make or break. Like, if you don't pass, then you're not even get in. So I ended up getting an interview, and then got word back. Maybe I actually came out of the interview being like, "Wow, that was horrendous. That was the worst thing I've ever done." Like, the woman interviewed me, she was like so intense, and I was just like, oh, kind of set back a little bit. But I ended up getting the job, and then that was in like the June of 2018, June 2018, I think it was. And then was it 2017? I don't know, 17 or 18, one of the years. And then I ended up moving out in the August. So working in the schools over here, doing anatomy, physiology, all that kind of stuff. The secondary school guys, and then that's kind of how I landed up in Dubai here.
That's great. I had no idea. Let's talk about, like Jake, you said, the pressure. Having a
I think that's so cool. You're in Dubai, man. I'm one of those weirdos that watches all these YouTube guys like Larry Wheels and like Thurston, and they've made their way out there. The training facilities are just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, some of the places out here, I mean, the money out here is just unbelievable. It's just, you're walking down the street and there's like Rolls Royces and things whipping around for fun. See them, you look at like a Mercedes out here and you think, that's all right. Like, there's this like Lamborghinis everywhere. Like, it's a bit of a bubble, really. It's a crazy kind of place. But
I'll ask a two-part question to that. The first is, are you happy there? And the second is, do you think you'll leave Dubai?
So when for your first part, I was getting towards, before COVID hit, really. I was kind of at the point of a job in the school where I was like, this is really what I want to do. Is it like me? And then the schools got closed for like, we still didn't go back until, I mean, the academic year just finished yesterday, and we still the kids haven't been back in school since March when COVID first kicked off. So it's been all online since then. But so that kind of like, for me, it was like, well, I don't have to be in the school. I was kind of like stuck in a bit of a rut there. I was like, and then once they kind of mind and give you like that kind of release from being locked in the like school office, if you will, and kind of being bound to it. As I've never really been in that situation where I kind of had to be in somewhere where I wasn't that thrilled about being. So yeah, once kind of you were working from home, you had a bit more free time, you could kind of be on your own schedule a bit more. That kind of got me a bit more excited about what I was doing. I could do a bit more, and I was happier in that sense. And it wasn't until I actually got COVID in January of last year, I think it was. Yeah, last January. And I had to quarantine in my and on our bedroom, we've got a bedroom down the far end, and it's like you had to be somewhere where you had an ensuite, or you had to be put into somewhere where you could be quarantined, basically. But we've got a suite there, and then we've got the balcony, so you can get like fresh air. So I was out on the balcony, and I just took. Obviously, I couldn't go to the gym or anything, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna. I've got like, this was in the early stages of me like accumulating some gym gear that I was just had in the house. I had like a few resistance bands, a few dumbbells, kettlebell, whatnot, and I just started programming. I had nothing to do for like 10 days, so I was like, I'm just gonna program myself a little bit of like a few sessions for like the coming weeks, and I was doing all these sessions on like outside on the balcony, and I was like, you know what, like I've got to get back into training. Like people are like coaching again. Like I missed it so much, and being in like the school environment, you couldn't really, you were tied to what, like obviously the hours you were in school as well, so it kind of cut off a lot of that as well. And yeah, I came out of quarantine and I just had this kind of like newfound, like, well, not newfound, but I kind of refound my passion, if you will, for like, I was like, I've got to get back into coaching again. So I had a bit of money saved up, and I bought like a squat rack. We've got like a terrace garden out the back here, and I bought a squat rack. I bought an assault bike, a ski erg. I fronted a bit of cash for all this gear, and I just put it out there on these like community groups out here in Dubai, and I was inundated with messages about people wanting to get like training and stuff like that. And so yeah, that kind of is now where I'm at now, with, I think, a lot of people. The thing is with Dubai, a lot of people, given the jobs that a lot of people have here, they traveled for like the summer months because it's so hot here as well. I mean, I want to say now it's like 45, 50 degrees. Like,
Jesus.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit for you guys, but
that's in the ballpark of 115, 120.
Yeah, it's warm. Walk outside now, you're sweating. And so right now, a lot of people have traveled away, but I started that in February. So took on clients, and it's more gen pop type stuff out here. But I was dying. I just wanted to get back coaching again, and I'm absolutely loving it at the minute. Like I say, I've got before a few people left last week, I've probably got like maybe like 20 clients. Some of them come in pairs, or some that like come together, and yeah, my evenings now, I have a few clients that come at like 5:30 in the morning, and then I was doing that, then going into school for a few hours, and then from like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, I've just got clients back to back. And yeah, like I say, it kind of, even people who were coming to me, they're like, you can tell how passionate you are about doing this. And I was like, yeah, I absolutely love like just being in that scenario, in that setting, in that scenario where people are there, like kind of knocking the pan out to work as hard as they can and better themselves, really. Yeah. And I just get such a buzz off like them doing that. And then obviously that led into more nutrition type coaching. And then the more kind of stuff I was doing with people, they were like, you should start putting some content out there. And I was like, oh, it's not really my thing. I won't really do that. And then that's when they started pushing like a little bit of stuff out on Instagram. And yeah, that kind of, I mean, it's not huge. I don't have a huge following on there, but there's the people that are following on me. I get quite a good like engagement with them, and people will message me saying, "Oh, I tried out a session you did the other day," or like, "I want like help with nutrition coaching," and people are doing that online. So I've got a few people in the UK, a few people in Ireland, people over here that maybe don't live as close to me that they want like online stuff doing. So I've kind of got a little bit of a balance now of in-person and online stuff that is hopefully where I'm going to try and lead on from here is to build more of like an online presence and kind of target a few more online clients and build from that way. So
Nice.
yeah, that's the plan going forward anyway. So we'll see how that goes.
Rich, I sometimes use your videos when I'm just like, I don't know what to do today, and I'll just go on, and I love them. They're quick.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I love that.
they're good. Yeah. So I'm ripping the gym after this, so maybe I'll do one for you.
Sorry, back home in the UK, they said the same thing. They were like, if I go in the gym, I don't know, and I've not really got a session on hand. I said, go on your Instagram and click through a session. I'll be like, I love that. That's class. That is free. If I have any type of impact on anybody, like I'm by no means calling myself an influencer or anything on that kind of line. But if someone can look at something I'm doing and be like, oh, that looks kind of cool, I'll do that, then yeah, I love that kind of thing.
Keep it up, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Rich, for me, the main message that I got from you, and I think I have no more questions, just that you're so passionate for this space. And as we had said earlier in the podcast, if I'm lucky enough to find something where I'm still getting butterflies or I'm still nervous as fuck to go into a session,
right,
I'm gonna have one. And I can see that you're like starting to hit that niche where you're so excited to go to work. So it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I have to say, Cam, thank you for meeting Rich and bringing him to Dan, because otherwise we never meet you. But bro, we could chat again forever, but thank you so much for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't even we like cross paths when I was over there. I have to put that down to Dan and Cam for not putting that opportunity out there. But yeah, appreciate it.
Hell yeah. And Rich will also in the notes put where people can find you as well for those workouts.
Yeah, definitely. So catch on the sessions and watch me sweating it out here on the terrace, because it's kind of.
I love it. Jake, you want to take us out?
Yeah. All right. Until next time. Peace.